Welcome to September's Regulatory Insight Community Q&A session. Again, we are a little bit shy in participants again today. So I'm not sure if this date and time are not suitable for most, or whether we don't really have an interest in having these. I'm going to try doing one more again in October. But in the meantime, I need to get some feedback from everyone as to is the agendas not correct, or what are you looking for? So I'm going to go through the session and record it and play it back in the community for those that want to look at it. But I need to get some feedback as to, is this something that we want to continue? So again, if you're not already in our community, you can get access at markrailer.com/community. And the agenda today was we would have had 10 minutes of networking with individuals in the group. Waited 10 minutes, no one showed up. So we're doing the Q&A session now, which would be the 20-minute session. And then once this is over, we would have had a breakout and opportunity to do some discussions and have you come back to have a final wrap up and relate what you determined that you need, so that I can put some of that information into our community and build some checklists, tools, online training programs, whatever you need. I'm not going to do it if there's no interest in it, and I'm not sure if anyone is interested, as I'm not getting that. So what is it that you want to know? So basically, we have three main regulations that deal with hazardous products and hazardous waste. And each one of them has some key aspects that we really need to be asking ourselves, and where I'd like to find out where individuals are actually struggling with, so where they need to help, so we can build some checklists, some reference documents, some short videos, maybe some online training programs, if there's a need and a demand for it. So first of all, we have WHMIS. WHMIS is the main caveat for dealing with hazardous products. And WHMIS information is basically delivered in three different ways. One is through the labels, so either the supplier label or workplace label, through safety data sheets, which gives us the information necessary to handle that product, how we protect ourselves with PPE. It also can provide you shipping information and incompatibilities and all of that good stuff. And then there's your worker education program. So when we talk about WHMIS training, typically there's two key aspects to WHMIS. There's the core training, which is the symbols like you see in the slide here, the hazards associated with it, identifying the information that needs to be on a label or on a safety data sheet, how to read that. And that's kind of the basics, and that's what a lot of people will get that training by going through online programs and maybe even something in-house. But what I find sometimes is lacking is what we refer to as the site-specific training. That's the training on the specific products that you actually have at your facility. Where are your safety data sheets actually maintained, and how does the worker access them? How does the worker determine if there's any products on site that are incompatible with each other? What are the hazards related to those incompatibilities? What PPE should they be wearing? Do they need any specific training on wearing that PPE, where do they find that PPE, how do they make sure it's the right size, all of that specific stuff. And typically, that site-specific training needs to come from someone that actually understands the process, and it's hard to get that type of training through an online training program. There are a number of resources available online, and you can go to WHMIS.org, as you can see in this screenshot on the side here. And from there, you can actually access your provincial regulatory resources by going down and looking at the province that you're interested in and pulling down references to regulatory links from there and find that. There's also a lot of additional resources, frequently asked questions, some training materials, tutorials, all of that available from CCOHS that you can see down in the bottom of the slide. So if you were to go to the Ontario Ministry of Labour site, their reference link is in this presentation here. You'll get to a slide that talks about Ontario health and safety training. And some of the training elements that they mentioned that it's required while working in Ontario are listed here. So, and this is just a sampling. It's not everything, but gives you an idea of what may be needed. So there's what we call basic awareness training for the worker as well as the supervisors. So anyone working in an Ontario facility, regardless of size, needs to have that basic awareness training as a worker, and all supervisors need to have that basic awareness training as well. Then there's either a joint health and safety committee or health and safety representatives at each facility in Ontario, and any facility with workers of 20 or more would require the joint health and safety committees. There's some specific training requirements for that. There's procedures, but basically that's there to protect the worker, help the worker, make sure that they're aware of what they need to be dealing with, and what is required of them. And there's someone there to basically help them should they feel that something is unsafe to work, because they do have the right to refuse unsafe work. There's also working at heights is one of the specific, and there are a number of other key pieces of training requirements that are geared, again, based on what are the activities that a worker is dealing with. Like, are they driving a forklift, for example? Are they, using a conveyor belt system? Lockout, tagout, whatever the case may be. So it's all very job specific, site specific, and it's also, again, very specific to what products you're handling. So what I was going to ask is for each of you to take back as part of your community networking, social workshop, as we want to call it, as a question to discuss after. This was one of them, is how do you know if your WHMIS training is adequate to meet the needs of your employees, as well as maintain regulatory compliance for all hazardous products that they may be handling at your workplace? So think about that. And that's one piece that I wanted you to kind of ponder on and look at to see how you're handling it. But then we get into the transportation of dangerous goods. First of all, we talked about this last month, but just as a reminder, do you need to know that you need to register your dangerous goods with this client identification database by October 25th, 2024. There is some links here in the slide, and there's also a questionnaire that you can go through to help you make the determination to determine, do I need to do this registration or not? But if you actually go to the CID website, you'll see a slide that looks like this. And from this slide, you'll notice that there's 2 video tutorials that Transport Canada has put together that you can click on those links and view those videos to get more information. The bottom line is essentially anyone that imports dangerous goods or ships dangerous goods in Canada more than likely will need to register. You'll need to be able to identify what are your products that you have that are dangerous goods that you're shipping or you are using, and you need to be able to identify them and register. And again, it's part of that risk-based scenario, just to make everyone aware of what's there. If you're not sure, what dangerous goods you have on site, uh, then that's kind of a scary thing. So how do we know if your employees are, adequately trained and handling them properly? So what training requirement is under TDG? Well, Part 6 of the Transportation Dangerous Goods Regulation says that you should always assume you need training. The only time training is not required is when you're not using or is when you're using an exemption, a special case. But if you have anything that doesn't meet that special exemptions, and you're transporting, handling dangerous goods for transport, then the individual is going to be trained. They're be required to have a certificate to indicate that they have received training. It's the employer's responsibility to issue a training certificate once they've received adequate training. And the employer needs to identify what the aspects or what was the training content that was covered in that to meet that employee's needs or employee's job. So this is a sample of a certificate that I use when I do TDG training for my clients. Your certificate doesn't have to look like this, but it has to have the key elements from Part 6 of the regulations that show essentially what that individual was trained in, so that you can make the justification that they've been trained adequately to do their job as they relate to dangerous goods. So again, this was the question I was going to give the community to take back and to discuss at their, tables, is how do you know if your TDG training is adequate to meet the needs of your employees as well as maintain regulatory compliance? So do you know which products that they're handling that are a dangerous good? Or, as we get into the next scenario, not necessarily just products, maybe what waste streams that you have that are also a dangerous goods. Do the employees know how to make sure that they're packaged properly, marked and labeled, that they have all the necessary documentation, labeling requirements on there? If we're storing them on site for a period of time before shipping it out, are we in compliance with WHMIS as well as the fire code? So those are things to keep in mind. Who's actually going to be loading these packages onto a vehicle for shipment? So your shippers and receivers trained on handling the dangerous goods, and do they understand how to fill out the documentation? So Ontario Waste Regulation 347 is Ontario provincial regulations for dealing with waste. We also have other provincial regulatory bodies across Canada that deal with waste as well, and they all kind of have to work hand in hand with TDG. So once the waste gets into the package and goes onto a vehicle and goes onto the road, we not only have to be in compliance with that provincial waste regulation, but we also need to be in compliance with TDG. So what are the regulated wastes, for lack of a better word? And in Ontario, we refer to those as subject waste. And anything that's a subject waste has to be registered with the RPRA. So there's some questions that you can look at to see, that you can get information from RPRA as related to the regulations. So one was, does a, you know, having a delegate basically assume the generator's regulatory obligations? And the answer to that is no. The rules in Reg 347 are related to the person is responsible for reporting the information about the hazardous waste activities. So in other words, if you are relying on your supplier, or pardon me, your waste carrier or waste provider for determining your waste classification, you know, is it a subject waste? And for doing the classification to complete your electronic manifest and to ship it out on your behalf, that doesn't alleviate you from any of the legal aspects as to whether that information is not completed correctly. As well, there's also the possibility that that subject waste, depending on the hazardous criteria associated with it, may also be a dangerous goods under TDG. And if such, then it also needs to meet all the TDG requirements in how it's packaged and marked and labeled and complete documentation, ship and name used on the documentation. So sometimes there's a people like to reuse containers, and maybe that drum or box that they're using may not be a UN performance type package and may not be assembled appropriately as per the TDG requirements. So if you're looking for some answers on the hazardous waste registry for generators, you can go to the RPRA site, and there's a link here, and you can actually view a bunch of documents there and see a lot of resources that are available for you to assist you in answering those questions. So what is a subject waste? Do you actually know what a subject waste is under Ontario Reg 347? Is your subject waste also a dangerous goods? Are your subject waste meeting WHMIS, TDG, as well as Reg 347 requirements when you're storing it at your site? When your electronic manifest is completed, especially if it's being generated for you by your carrier, is it meeting TDG requirements? Does it have a 24-hour emergency number on there? Uh, does it have all the necessary elements that are required by TDG? It's the right shipping name. It's the right classification, right UN number. Who's determining that classification and that shipping information for your waste, and are they adequately trained to do that? So these are questions, again, that I was hoping that we would get individuals to take back, to have part of their discussion, and get some feedback to see, you know, where are the gaps, where are the deficiencies that maybe you need some help with, where would you like to see some tools, some guidance documents. I'm willing to do those, but like I say, I'm not going to do them if there's no need, or just for the sake of doing it. So at this point, I would have asked you to we would have closed down this presentation here, and you would have went back to the open tables, and you select a table with someone and discuss these Canadian regulations such as TDG, WHMIS, and any provincial waste regulations. I would hope that you'd be able to share some of the best practices that you're using at your facility so that individuals can learn from what's working at other facilities. And then I wanted you to kind of gather the questions among your group and bring that back to a final wrap up where we could discuss what are the tools that maybe you're missing, what are the resource materials that you need, uh, what are maybe some good topics for us to use in our next session. So you would have broke out into an environment that would have looked like this. There would have been tables there that were identified either as TDG, WHMIS, or waste that you could have went and sat with others that had the same need and you would have been able to have a private chat where you could discuss amongst yourselves and collect your thoughts and then come back as a group to present. So unfortunately, that wasn't happened. So skip to the next one. We would have had final discussions and wrap up. And at this point, we would have discussed what are the questions, concerns that you have, and what would be topics that you'd like to see for the October 2nd webinar. So I am going to try to do another one of these on October the 2nd. I will send some information out as to say, what are topics that you're interested in? Are you even interested in having these webinars, or should I discontinue them? And or is maybe the first Wednesday of the month not a good time? What is a alternative time? So with that, I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to finalize this. I'm going to record this, and I will post it in the community site. But again, I need feedback from you. Am I wasting my time, or is this something that you're truly interested in? And please let me know. Okay, thanks.